on this, the 10th anniversary of the 9/11 terrorist attack. Joining us now, two special guests. Democratic Congressman Keith Ellison of Minnesota is joining us. He's the first Muslim elected to the United States House of Representatives. Also joining us is Geneive Abdo. She's an author and writer, author of the book Mecca and Main Street, Muslim Life in America After 9/11. Geneive, thanks as well for joining us. Congressman, first to you, what goes through your mind knowing that, we're talking 10 years ago, 19 terrorists, 15 of them from Saudi Arabia, all Muslims, attacked the United States and killed some 3,000 people?
Well, what's going through my mind today, as it was 10 years ago, is an overwhelming feeling of solidarity with my fellow Americans. Overwhelming sorrow for the people who we lost, but then a great deal of pride for the people who ran into that burning building and tried to save fellow Americans. And the people who tried to rescue fellow Americans were Muslim, they were Christian, they were Jewish, they were Baha'i, they were people of no faith, they were people of all faiths. And they didn't care who was in that building. If they could save them, they did. And so that's what I'm feeling today. I mean, yes, of course, we could talk about, civil rights, profiling, and these things are important to discuss. But today, I'm just feeling just remembering a lot of affection for Americans lost and Americans who stood up and met the moment with heroism.
Geneive, you spent the last 10 years reporting on, researching Muslims in America. How has the Muslim community in America changed as a result of 9/11?
Well, they have become much more involved with Islam. They identify more with Islam. And this is true particularly with the younger generation. They're very involved in their mosque communities. So what's happened, I think that we see not only anecdotally from all the communities I have visited, but also according to the polling results, what we're seeing is that as Muslims have become more identified with Islam, a majority of Americans actually have more negative feelings toward Islam and Muslims since 9/11.
And that has sort of sparked this reaction, because you would think that maybe after 9/11, younger American Muslims would become less religious, more secular, if you will. But what you're learning is that it's just the opposite.
Well, I think that this is true among religious Muslims and among young Muslims, that they feel that they have comfort now in Islam because they are joining organizations, Muslim students associations, for example, on campuses, on college campuses. Even a college in the middle of the Midwest in a very remote area has now a Muslim students association. And this wasn't true 10 years ago.
Congressman, you're in the Midwest, you're in Minnesota right now. Is that your experience as well, that younger American Muslims, younger women, for example, are wearing headscarves, more traditional look? Is that your experience as well, Congressman?
Yeah, it is common, but I want to just caution viewers that this is not a bad thing. I mean, these are what I'm seeing is Muslims who want to do more volunteer work at clinics to serve people of all faiths, that they want to get more civically engaged and offer leadership and volunteerism to community organizations and get more involved in the process. So while it is true, I think that Geneive is right, that there is the greater identification. It's not an us versus you identification. It's people saying, you know what, this is my country and I'm going to do something about it through the vehicle I know best, which is my faith. But this is not necessarily a thing that anyone should be worried about. In fact, the people who commit acts of terrorism generally do these things for political grievances, and the people who reject them because religiously it's an immoral, wrong thing to do.
Let me bring you, Geneive, back into the conversation. You agree with the Congressman?
Yes, I didn't hear all of what he was saying actually, but I think that the Muslim community is much more cohesive now than they were before. I think that their leadership, for example, like Congressman Ellison, their leadership has become much more involved. They've empowered themselves after 9/11, and that's the positive side.
Are you worried, Congressman, about American attitudes here towards the Muslim community, not only in the United States, but indeed around the world?
Yeah, well, I'm worried, but I'm not overly distressed. And the reason why is that the people who are driving Islamophobia are a fairly small group of people who spend night and day trying to whip up anti-Muslim hatred. They're identifiable, they're small, they're well known. And my experience is that even if Americans who are of other faiths, may have a not positive attitude toward Muslims, when they meet them, when they meet people of the Muslim faith, and they see that people are just like them, generous, loving people, good neighbors, good co-workers, then a lot of that fear dissipates and goes away. I just think that, our whole country needs to be reminded about the importance of religious tolerance, that religious tolerance is enshrined in the first clause of the First Amendment, in which the Constitution says Congress shall make no law establishing a state religion or abridging the free exercise thereof.
Geneive, as you know, we're seeing really dramatic changes unfold throughout the Muslim world in North Africa and the Middle East. How is this going to play out here in the United States as far as American attitudes towards Muslims is concerned in the U.S. relationship with the Muslim world?
Well, I think that what we've seen from the Arab awakening, as we call it, is that Muslims all over the world want some form of pluralism, some form of democracy in their countries. I mean, it could take much longer than we expect for there to be, for example, a democratic system in Egypt. But I think that it shows Americans that Muslims are, they want to become part of the modern world. They don't want to be alienated from the West. And so I think that that's a very positive story that with some luck will show Americans that maybe the kinds of negative feelings they've had about Muslims are incorrect.
Geneive Abdo with the Century Foundation here in Washington. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congressman Ellison, as usual, thanks to you as well. And our coverage continues right now.
September 11th, 2001. A brilliant